Welcome to the Right Conversation, our first virtual panel. Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers, either currently or expecting. I'm JD Dubois. I'm the founder of Everyone Has a Story. And Mom, I just want to say thank you, for all of your sacrifices, all of the moments of vulnerability where you created a space that everybody's not perfect, and you owned any of your imperfections and allowed us to be comfortable in ours as well. And we appreciate the journey that you've embarked on, but also shared with us to allow us to get a perspective on what we can do when embracing our healing. And we appreciate that. I'll allow Dr. Yeager and then the rest of our panelists to introduce themselves as well. But Mom and all the other mothers that I know and that have helped me become the man that I am, thank you. I love you and appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Corey Yeager, and I'll echo some of JD's pieces, but one thing I would say is to my mom and my sister who are listening, and my wife, how important they are in playing the role of shaping who I am today. They're important to me. And you talk about this imperfection piece. None of us are perfect, but we all are striving to try to make sure that we take care of our babies, especially. And my sister and my mom did that for me, and still today do. So I'm deeply appreciative of who they are, who they've been, and the legacy that they leave. So I'll just say that I look forward to this conversation in the context of Mother's Day, relationships, and being well. I look forward to this convo.
Gotta let moms go first.
Yeah, but I say moms and women first.
Tyra, Eiland here. I am a mom of 4, so this day is cool, but every day is Mother's Day in our household. I'm super thankful to be spending time with you all to talk about this platform. Super important for me and my journey. My mom, I just sent her the link, so I hope she's watching. She has taught me a lot more so about the importance of loving people for who they are, not who we want them to be, mainly because of her journey and our relationship. It really forced us to learn how to love, and we're still on that journey. Like, how do we love each other and interact with each other? So I'm grateful for that. Having 3 girls out of the 4, I am learning that some of the things she told me as a kid, I am in the process. So I'm grateful for our relationship, and I'm really excited to have the conversation today.
I'm Kayce. I am a freelance host. I work with the WNBA, the NBA. I'm not a mom, but I am a dog mom. Obviously thankful for my mother, all the women in my life, my grandma. Obviously without them, I wouldn't be where I am today or who I am as a woman. Obviously I've learned a lot from them. And yeah, today's just dedicated to all the mothers out there.
Hey, I'm Langston Galloway from the Detroit Pistons. Excited to be on this panel and getting to talk about life and what's going on right now. So I really want to give a shout out to my mom, my mother-in-law, and then most importantly, my wife. 3 significant women in my life that hold a huge impact on everything that I do and everything I continue to do. So big shout out to them, and then all my aunts and all the moms of my best friends and brothers. Big shout out to those moms, because they've all helped raise me and helped raise our whole little village. So big shout out to them.
Tyra, to kind of start us off, could you give us a little insight on what motherhood looks like in these times, and kind of what that shift was like from the start of hearing about COVID-19 and transitioning into basically our country shutting down, and how that has affected your day-to-day life?
It's definitely been a journey. At the beginning, it was me trying to balance this being my reality. Where does my faith come in? And having my kids and being a teacher. Like, I never signed up to be a teacher. I didn't homeschool my kids. So, right, there's a learning curve. And so at the beginning, we were coasting. I was cranking out at the beginning a whole bunch of work, and then I would do schoolwork with them incorporate Christian education, and then we were on a roll. But as every shift happens, you're high at the beginning. But now that we're in this meaty time where we've been doing it some for months, it's starting to transition and look different. It's difficult more so because we've gotten in the groove in my workspace. So the demand is there a little bit higher, and being able to consistently dedicate time and effort to teach my kids, I have slacked. And I was just on another panel on Friday, and we talked about it as moms. I mean, we didn't sign up to be teachers, and the curriculum, we are learning with them. So it's YouTube for 5 minutes, and then it's teaching them. And then I have to go back to like all of these things that I probably didn't have with them: patience, gentleness. Like, I have to build that in there so they're still learning and I'm able to help them. So I would say in the more recent weeks, it's gotten a little bit more difficult because we're still here. And I would have said a few months ago, we would have been back into a different group. It may not have looked the same, but they would be in school, that there would be. And I think that was just my imagination more than the reality. But the nice part is me and my husband have learned how to operate in this space. Like, when is it important for him to have the kids? When is it important for me to have the kids? How can he help with their education while I'm doing other stuff? So we're being challenged in ways that we never have before, but it shows the importance of, constant communication, adjusting to change, and continuing to go forward with goals, because it is not easy being the mom. No shade to the fathers, but it is different because kids are looking for mom at the end of the day. We carry them for 9 months. So even if you say go to dad, or you're a daddy's girl, or whatever, it doesn't seem to always stick as much as it does when they need something. So it's been a balance. It's been an adjustment. It has been constant prayer. And it has been calling on people who have faith in the time of frustration, because I cannot say that it has been joy the last 3 weeks. There have been some roller coasters.
I think for me, starting off, obviously as a freelance, entrepreneur, essentially, it was kind of scary in the beginning. But essentially my work is all on social media, you know what I mean? So it's like, yes, I can't do like physical hostings. I can't travel. I can't be at those events, but what can I do to still produce content? And obviously, like I said in the beginning, it was kind of scary because it was like, for me, it was like a bunch of the brands that I worked with were reaching out like, hey, like, we're cutting off the influencer program. Like, we don't have the funds. It just doesn't make sense right now. But then it was like, okay, well, what can I do to make the best of the situation, right? It's like, what can I do differently? So it was like, do I try launching a brand? It was like, I partnered up with my friend and we launched Max, and that has been really successful. So it's just like, what can I do with what I have to make the best of the situation? So, although it has been tough being inside and trying to produce content with like the bare minimum that I have, it's kind of challenged me and pushed me to think outside of the box of what I was doing normally, to be like, okay, if the internet was to shut down right now, like, what would I be doing, or what could I do to still survive? So yeah, it was a little scary in the beginning, but I think it's challenged me in the end. And I mean, obviously, I'm sure like everybody else wants to get out of the whole quarantine situation, but I can say that it's actually been good for me, essentially. So what came in as me looking at a negative situation turned out for me to be a positive one. So,
And Doc and LG, with us being in a business where we're traveling all the time, it's rare that we get a chance to be home. How has this helped in terms of being able to now spend that quality time, or any other thoughts on how the pandemic that we're in has shifted a little bit in terms of fatherhood?
LG, go ahead.
No, it's funny because I take a little bit of a case saying, the first couple of days, like me and my wife, we just didn't know what to expect. Having little man at home, and kind of what you said, JD, like being home even more now, it was kind of like, all right, well, what do we do with our time now? But then after like a couple of days, like I really like fell into just a love for being at home, and being able to be around little man to kind of nourish him and help him with his growth and kind of being that substitute teacher. I feel like every day we get up trying to find ways to help him learn something new, whether that's trying to learn, I don't know, a word in Spanish or trying to learn a word in French or something like that. And that's been super fun because, like you said, being on the road is so difficult to, have those interactions when you're gone and then he might be at school or doing something at daycare or something like that. So being at home has been amazing from that aspect, especially for both me and my wife, like being able to hang out with him more, teaching him more. Like he's learning how to potty train right now, and we're teaching him at that stage right now. So it's been fun. It's been difficult, but it's been fun all at the same time. And then I've really been able to shape like all my businesses, like all the things that I've kind of stepped out of my comfort zone and kind of continue to learn how to create a business plan for LG Kicks. I've really been on a lot of calls with venture capitalists trying to learn how I can kind of continue to enter into that space. And then just building out like I have like apparel and whatnot that I sell. So just everything that I've kind of been working on the last couple of months, I've really been able to shape that in my own way and mold that. And it's been great. It's been great to kind of really get a handle on it because I think I've been doing everything kind of half-heartedly, not having my whole foot in, but now looking from, from a kind of overview of all I've been working on, it's been really good. I've been really enjoying every step of the way.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on what LG said, and say that he said fun. I mean, it has been. I am the grace of God. We have been covered. We are so good. I compare that to what so many people are dealing with. So for me being home, it really ties into what Kayce said. I heard Kayce describing a reflective process. All of a sudden, we're shoved into the house. So what I'm gonna do? I have to adjust. So one of the things that occurs in those moments, similar to a Mother's Days, anniversaries, birthdays, they're all reflective moments. You can't help it. It's built into it. You're gonna reflect. And what are you reflecting on? You're reflecting on your many covenants. We have many covenants in our lives, but too often we don't revisit those covenants. So Mother's Day and these moments are reflective. And it's something that we should do more of. That is an important piece. But also Tyra said something that was important. So we're home, but we have built these social networks our whole lives. We built them. And why do you build them? You build them so you can utilize them. You don't build something not to use. You don't build a home and say, who's gonna let it sit there? If you build it, then you're building it to use. So in these moments, using the social networks that we have developed is critical. And within those social networks, Tyra spoke about that group of people that have come around. And what are they? They are our wise counsel. We must always have that wise counsel that we can lean on, especially in moments where we have a deficit. So those are just quick thoughts that I have to that point, JD, that's connected to what everybody else is talking about.
And for me, it's been an interesting space because quarantine or not, this is pretty much how I live my life. In the house all the time. I don't really do anything. And so I enjoy it. But I also had to check myself in the sense of I'm privileged to enjoy my household. I'm privileged to know I'm going to be able to pay the rent this month, next month, the month after that. It's a healthy space. It's a peace. My peace of mind is present when I'm at home. And there's many people during this time that is the exact opposite. They're trying to figure out how are they going to pay not only the rent this month, but they can't even fathom how they're going to pay rent next month. In terms of peace of mind, every day they're spending twice as much time with people that are detrimental to their mental well-being. So understanding that on one hand, I'm enjoying it, I'm loving it, like Dr. Yeager just mentioned, reaching back to my covenant. What's my purpose? What are my values? Because work is out, entertainment is out, sports are out. Is that what defines me, or are there things that are deeper that make me who I am? And Tyra, I'd love for you to kind of speak on that privilege, and anybody else can jump in as well, of having a household that is healthy, and the fact that we all have to appreciate that, because there's households that are dealing with others who aren't mentally well and are suffering from different mental illnesses. And a lot of times we speak on the support that the individual suffering from the mental illness can have, but we don't necessarily speak on the people that are on the receiving end of that mental illness.
That was the first thing that came to mind. Like, once this became a reality where it was, you're leaving your house for essentials only, I began to reflect on my journey. So it's a trigger, right? It's happening to other people, but the trigger is my own personal experience. So I could relate it back to the times where I was younger and my mom dealt with her addiction to alcohol, and she was depressed a lot and suicide attempts. So I spent a lot of my life alone as a child when I was younger. And so I'm thinking about how lonely it was and what life was like. So any kids who are living in those spaces, what does that silence feel like? Sometimes it could be detriment to your soul, because you don't know. You have no purpose to a certain extent, and you're so worried about that parent, especially when it's your mom. It's just like this connection from the womb that you can't let go. So that's one journey that I had to go back and reflect on as we talk about reflection and what this space brought. And then the second phase was reflecting on my early adult relationship, being in a abusive relationship and what that journey was like. And so being in a household and being confined to verbal abuse, physical abuse, financial abuse, like, I can go through so many different scenarios where I was in those situations. And the fact is, I didn't even know it. And so to be in something and not understand what you're experiencing, but understand that it's hurting you, understanding that you're sad, understanding that you are just looking and wanting something to make you feel good. There were a lot of people who were upset about the liquor store still being open. And I heard it, but I couldn't hear it, because I remember being in those spaces and that being the thing that just kept me at peace. And is it something that I would suggest to anyone now? No, but that's what kept me balanced. It was better than lashing out. It was better than the alternative for me. And so I thought about all of those different scenarios, because I have a beautiful home. I have a beautiful family. I'm married into a huge family. My husband's one of 13, so I am lacking nothing in terms of support. So we want to make masks. We had a whole crew making masks. We want to go get hand sanitizer. You can only get 2. We got 12 people to get 2. So I was very fortunate in so many different ways, but my heart pulled for where I came from. The situations that I was raised in, the situations that I could see on people's face when you're on a video chat and you could feel somebody's emotions of depression because their family is across the country or because they're unhappy. That really stuck with me. And for me, faith is the foundation of everything I do. So I prayed for people who were on my heart, but I just had to really, sit in it for a second to figure out why I was pulling at my heartstrings so hard and why it was still a trigger. And so I had to go down memory lane and reflect a little bit more and see why that was such a big draw for me. That was more important to me than the virus. And it was because I had to let go of that abusive mindset and some of those things that may have been showing up in my habits throughout my life right now.
So Tyra, one thing that you say is that something that we're dealing with that's becoming, maybe, I don't know, something that's bigger than the virus, to your point, is the anxiety around it. Now we're all moving differently, trying to figure out where we are and how this thing operates. So I'd love to hear, because I think we're all dealing with anxiousness, different levels of anxiousness. Kayce and LG, your thoughts on how being in that isolated space, how's that working for you? And maybe you're used to it, but I think there's a different spin when you're used to it, but then you're being told, don't go nowhere. I'm used to being home anyway, but now they saying don't go nowhere. How's that? Does that impact y'all? Do y'all think about that at all?
So for me, again, like as an entrepreneur, it's like I don't really have a set schedule, so I'm kind of used to being like inside the house. Like the only thing that's different for me is like I'm not able to travel, and even growing up, like being told I can't do something makes you want to do it even more, right? So it's like I can't hang out with my friends, like okay, like I want to hang out with them and it makes me want to hang out with them more and like be outside. And like for my mom and like my dad, like the only downfall, and you know, I'm probably gonna like get backlash for saying this, but I don't want to say I haven't like quarantined like 100%, but I mean, I've worked out outside, you know, I have seen a couple people, you know, like working out with them outside. And so for my parents, like my mom, she had breast cancer. And so like, and she had one of her lymph nodes removed. So like a paper cut, she can be hospitalized. So she's not taking any chances. So that is like the only thing that's really, really bothering me, is that I can't see like my mom and dad. I can't hang out with them. I go over and they act like I have the virus. Yeah. Will make me eat outside. Like it sucks that that's probably the only thing that's really bothering me. And so, I mean, other than that, I've kind of been living a pretty normal life, or what I'm used to, just being inside and being on my own schedule. And, you know, like I said, everything I pretty much do is like on social media. So I can really do that anywhere. Yeah, I guess the only thing that's really like mentally like bothering me is not being able to like physically hang out with like my family and things like that.
Yeah, and Kayce, you talk about something that's important. The human condition calls for engagement. Right. It's the human condition. I want to hug and touch and feel and see, read your body language when I talk to you. That's what the human condition calls for that. Right. So we're in a space for the first time where we can't get that everywhere we're used to. We have to be what you talked about. You brought a theme up in this conversation. We have to be reflective. Well, what is the learning for all of us? And then I'm handing it to LG. What is the learning that we will take from this? We all should be asking ourselves that question. What do we learn from this? That Nelson Mandela said a quote. I say it all the time. I'm going to keep saying it all the time. In life, we don't lose. We either win or we learn. What is the learn in this situation is what we got to try to draw from. So I love that point. LG, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny because like you saying, like learning, my first kind of thoughts, and I kind of talked about this with my wife, was like, man, this is really a reality check on once basketball stops bouncing for me, this is what's going to happen. Like, this is how life's going to be when it stops. But it's actually still bouncing, but it's just, you know, it's just a pause and everything. So it made me like think like, okay, well, how do I adjust? How do I react? How do I live the right way in this space? Or how do I even make the right decisions? Me and my wife like trying to be able to move the right way and help each other grow right now, because we don't want to be stagnant. We don't want to just sit still and not do nothing. It's actually been, to kind of go off the point of kind of what we've been doing, has been beneficial, because we've kind of our house that we live in, we've kind of like ordered some like equipment to the house. I've kind of put together like a makeshift gym in the backyard, and like just blessed to have a backyard. First and foremost, like a lot of people, they might have apartments or might not even be fortunate enough to have that. And I mean, it's been great being able to work out with my wife and like, you know, us being able to talk about different things while working out, her kind of bouncing ideas off of me with how she can kind of learn and grow in this space while she's working out, and then I'm doing the same thing. All right, well, the ball's not bouncing, but I can work out in the backyard, shoot on my hoop, and just kind of be creative with the space that we do have. And it's been great, because then I'm able to like teach little man, like he's learning how to ride a bicycle right now. He's only turning 2, but he's able to, there's like this glide bike that they have for kids now, and he's like gliding up and down our driveway, backyard, like he's just rolling. So it's like, it's fun, but it's all at the same time, like I'm cognizant of like, all right, well, we need to be just aware of our surroundings, of like most people in where we're at is like they're not doing anything like this. They kind of staying in their bubbles and kind of staying patient with everything. But we've been so blessed to kind of use our resources and the people that we've been connected with to help us out with this time, to kind of make use of it.
Let me tell you, and I'm gonna hand it to JD, but you just said it again. That's what I listen for all the time. Anytime people come into conversation, a pattern will emerge pretty quickly. It doesn't take long. Well, and the pattern of this conversation already is about reflection. That's what it is. Everybody's touched on it. Everybody on this conversation is touched on reflection and why it tells us the power of the unconscious. On Mother's Day, what are we doing? We come together. What do we talk about? Reflection. That's the power of understanding those moments in our lives that are utilized for certain things. And I've talked to a number of guys, and LG just hit that point, that right now it's almost like a pause. It's almost like a practice for what it would feel like when I'm done, when I'm retired. So you begin to reflect on, all right, where we at, where we going, and then you take this moment of pause. I like the way LG describes it as a pause, that I get to play a little bit. We'll reset and get back to some semblance of normal, but are we utilizing the pause as a learn? What I heard LG say is we're learning. Sabrina talked about it. I've heard you and Sabrina talk about it. We're learning together. And that opens the avenues for what we call requisite variety. We got to have variety in our lives. The more variety I have, the more options I have. LG, that's a good piece. JD, my bad.
No, just to touch on a couple of things, LG, you mentioned kind of the makeshift gym and how you've created a space that you can continue to improve. I think as a coach, one thing that I'm noticing is what players are finding a way to improve and get better, and what players are finding a way to say, the facility's closed. I can't go to the gym. I don't know when we're going to come back. I see both ends of players, and it's crazy because the ones that I see, like a Langston Galloway who's finding a way, are the ones that even if I didn't know what he was doing, I knew I could check the box of LG gonna figure something out. He's gonna lift some furniture. He's gonna push it up. He's gonna find a way. The cream is rising to the top in these moments. And Kayce, you brought up a point that I can relate to in terms of the difficulty of not being able to visit a loved one because of their health, their immune compromised state. And for me, having to check myself in, like I mentioned earlier, I like being at home, but Doc, you mentioned a good point, but I also like to move when I want to move. So having a family member that I would love to have a break where I could just go book a flight and go visit them, but they're immune compromised. So the fact that it's helpful to not go visit a loved one that is ill, concept that we've never experienced. Usually someone's not feeling well, you take off work, you go be with them. That's the end of the story. But now we're in a space where it's selfish if you go and visit someone that's immune compromised. And then Tyra and Doc, I'd love for you to touch on this, all of those, but this one specifically. You mentioned situations that fit what we kind of view as trauma. And Doc, I'd love for you to describe what trauma is and how we can be more cognizant of, is a situation I'm in traumatic? Because a lot of times, because it happens often, we just view it as, oh, that's just what it is. That's just how he is. That's just how she is. But there can be versions of that is traumatic. I'd just love to get your thoughts, Doc, on both the awareness piece and the moving forward once we are aware that a situation or anything that's traumatic.
Yeah. So this piece that we've talked a little bit about, so I'll be, for brevity purposes, I'll go quick. It's really something that's happened too much, too often, too soon. Something in your life that occurred in any of those spaces. It's really having a situation that was distressful that damages a portion of the mind, right? So that didn't say the brain, the mind, the way I see and feel and adjust to my movement in this world. So if we know that, so most of us have experienced some version or portion of trauma. But if it's normalized in my family or my community, we won't see it as trauma. So it'll happen, but it's normalized. Yeah, I got my ass whooped. I got a whooping. Yep, I did. But that's what my community did. But then once I moved outside of my community, got perspective on it, and said, everybody, you didn't get whooped with a cord? What? Oh, I got to check that against another set of quote unquote normal. I don't really use that term. I don't think it's true, but that's a whole nother piece. But I got to check it against what other experiences were. And then I got to change it. One of the things about trauma is we got to become aware, got to know it's happening. It happened. And then you have to say, I'm going to make a conscious effort to do something different. So small trauma, small T trauma. I didn't hear I love you a lot growing up. That's not a big trauma. It's a small trauma. Happens over time. But I know my people love me. But then as I came together with my wife, she had that same experience in her family. And we said, I want the boys to say I love you. I have 4 boys. I want that for them. I want them to know that we love them verbally. We began to change that trajectory. Now my boys will I love you to death. If that boy go downstairs to get a drink, he gonna say I love you when he leave my room. But that's now what we've created. And that's all they'll know as they move forward. So what we do? We broke that generational curse. We chose to do something different. And from now on, that's all my kids and their family, my grandkids will know. Great grandkids, I know that's just how it's gonna be. So for brevity, I'm not good with brevity. I'm working on it, JD. I ain't great with it.
I think it's important in terms of happening too often, too soon. What was the other one?
Too often, too soon, too much.
Too much, because when I think of different circumstances that happen in the inner city, gun violence, a variety of things that young Black males have to deal with, and we talk about this a lot, Doc, this the PTSD term, and the language of post. When I've been thinking about it lately, it's more of progressively traumatic stress disorder, because there was never a post for young Black and brown men and women. There's just been progressively different traumatic experiences. And I think we have to be a little more aware of the fact that there's no post to that. And because there's no post, we have to continue to progressively, 1, be aware, but 2, be intentional about healing through those traumas.
You messing with me. You just want me to be, you want me to preach. Hey, because Dr. Joy DeGruy, who wrote the book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, it talks about the roots of slavery, finding a home to who we are today. Still the things we do, even from whoopings and all that. It's post-trauma. It's not culture, it's post-trauma. So what it is, to your point, it is not post. It is present trauma. So we call post when it's done. Right? The post is, it's done, it's over. No, it's not. And that happens for individuals that may be living in a household of trauma, and they've experienced it over and over and over, and they're still connected to it even at an older age. That's not post-trauma. You're still in the midst of the trauma. You didn't even know it. Important to become aware of that. I think that's huge.
And Kayce, you brought up a great point on our podcast interview about wishing that back when you were younger, you would have been a little more comfortable talking to people around you. I think Dr. Yeager talks a lot about how that first step to healing and dealing with things comes from just voicing that. Could you speak kind of to your thoughts on just thinking back to when you were younger, struggling, and then kind of bring it to the present day in terms of your progression of being more comfortable to whatever level of struggle you may have, being comfortable to speak to those around you, and how that has helped you as well along the way?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, it was like, you don't really talk about your personal problems, you know what I mean? Like, there was just always bigger issues, bigger problems. And as I mentioned before, like, my mom she had breast cancer, and she got it when I was in 3rd grade. And so dealing with something like that and being told like your mom might not live longer than so many months, like as a child, I mean, anybody for that matter, any age, you know what I mean? But especially thinking of like me being so undeveloped, like mentally, being told as a 3rd grader, like your mom might not live, like that's just something that's like, okay, how do I deal with this? And it was like I said, it was like, I was always taught there was bigger problems than what, something that I might be dealing with personally. And so because of that, it was like I was kind of forced into like support groups, my parents tried to force me to talk about things. And I think that's where I was like held back, was that I felt like I had to talk about things, and not so much that I wanted to talk about things because I was ready to, right? And I feel like because of that, it kind of, I don't want to say damaged me, but I feel like it kind of like held me back from, talking about things earlier in my life. whereas opposed to now, I'm very open with things. And I feel like you have to just let people talk about things and their problems and their issues or whatever they have going on their own time, and it not be something that's like forced. You know what I mean? Because I do know people who are like, you need to talk about your problems. You need to talk about it now. That's the way you deal with things. But not everybody deals with things the same way. And it was like, once I understood, like, okay, it's okay to deal with things on my own time, on my own terms when I'm ready. That's when I was like, okay, I can open up and talk about these things because I want to, not because people are telling me I have to, I need to, oh, I'm going to have issues if I don't talk about it. Once I realized it was like all about me and when I was ready, that's when I was, like I said, able to be like, all right, I want to be open about everything that I'm dealing with. And I really want to start my journey with, you know, mental wellness.
Hey, Kayce, there is no expiration on feelings. That's the point I hear. There is no expiration. Can't nobody tell me when I'm supposed to be upset or feel sad. Nobody else gets to make that call. But in our society, oftentimes, there are so many that try to tell us. And many times, Kayce, they mean well.
Right.
Because they want to see us better. And they mean well. It's almost like a nasty little thing in the chocolate box that you wouldn't eat, covered with a cover. I don't know what's in there. Well, people don't understand all of our processes, and it's not not easy to figure out how to pull back and when to push and all of those things. I think that's a deep piece, though.
Yeah, because I think, like I said, growing up, it was like I had some people telling me like, oh, like I said, there's bigger problems. And then I had other people who were like, you need to talk about everything right then, or, you know, it's going to just weigh on you. And I really feel like it was like all about, I said, knowing when I felt like it was ready to talk, when I was ready to talk about it.
That's right. Yeah, that's good.
LG, I'd love to get your thoughts on anything that has come specifically from the transition of Adam Silver, who we all understand is a genius in terms of leadership, and his implementation of having a mental wellness professional on every NBA team. Can you kind of speak to your experiences prior to having that mandated, and then post, how you've been able to have someone like a Doc Yeager in terms of support system, and how that has allowed you to just feel that any situation, whether it be small or large, knowing that you have someone available to talk to on a day-to-day basis. If you could just kind of give your thoughts on maybe some struggles that you had earlier in your career. If this would have been implemented before, it could have helped you with being traded or being waived or whatever the case may be. But now the advantage of having that at this point in your career.
Yeah, you know what's crazy is that when I first started in New York, the first 2 years under like the Phil Jackson and Derek Fisher reign, we actually had a therapist on site every single day, practice. If it was just an off day, whatever, like he was always on site. And I mean, it really helped out because he kind of, I'm not saying put guys in different places, but he would kind of be there to talk to somebody and bounce ideas off of. But then also too, he would kind of feel a sense of how the team is kind of coming together, and then also how the team was growing. We were a young team at the time, going a lot of lumps that came in the first 2 years with my era, but it was good because a lot of guys kind of trusted in me early on, but I didn't really know that. But like our therapist kind of, he mentioned that or like hinted at that sometimes to me, and I was just like, oh, cool, that's cool. But I mean, I'm just a young guy. I'm a young pup just trying to, make it in the league. Like, I'm just trying to get my feet wet. And then going on down my career, 3, 4, 5 years in, that's when it kind of like the imbalance of not having that person to kind of bounce ideas off of and really just learn at a quicker rate rather than just going through it by myself. And I think that's where I kind of got stagnant at. And I really had to like lean on my faith because I really didn't know if my career was going to continue to go or it was going to just stop at one point. Just say, I mean, I worked hard, but I wasn't getting the same opportunities that I had received when I was in New York and how hard I worked. So I just was frustrated, just going through a lot mentally, physically just beat up. And then when that mandated passed, and, you know, a lot of guys came out, DeMar, Kevin Love, like, you know, a lot of guys started talking about it a little bit more, and it kind of became second nature when, you know, you're able to talk to a therapist or talk to somebody that's in your organization, or maybe somebody outside the organization. It really just, it gave a lot of guys, including myself, a lane to just continue to kind of pick up where they left off and kind of learn more on the fly, rather than having to wait until after the season to kind of rekindle relationships with other people that might be able to help you. So I think that me and Dr. Yeager, we kind of bounce ideas off of each other left and right. Like every single day, it could be a conversation, or it might not, sometimes it doesn't have to be a conversation. Sometimes it could be a text message or something that going into the day, like, hey, look, this is what I saw yesterday. Maybe you should think about doing this tomorrow. Maybe this might be something that I think guys need to see out of you today, going into practice. Okay, cool. All right, I can kind of feel through a practice or feel through a situation, and then kind of pick my own options. And I think that that's where this year has really been beneficial for myself. Like, I mean, I had a great year as of yet, but I think that the leadership role that I've kind of taken on and really learned has been fluid, but it's been definitely like a learning curve for sure.
Doc, before you go, I think it's
Where I'm going?
huh?
Where I'm going?
I know. I'm saying. I thought you was about to say something.
Oh, you were just trying to be, that's a preemptive strike. Oh, you trying to shut me up first. Okay, go ahead. I feel you though. Good with that.
50, 60 years from now, we'll look back and say, what DeMar and even guys like Marcus and Markieff Morris, what they did in terms of being vulnerable enough at the height of their careers to speak on issues that they didn't have to speak of. DeMar and those guys, they didn't have to speak on that. They could have just kept collecting their check, kept dealing with what they were dealing with in their own time, and no one would ever know. And who knows if there was a risk on if teams may not want to do. They were concerned with sharing their story and making sure that everyone else knew that I'm struggling, and you might be too, and it's okay. And creating a space now to where other players are more comfortable, and I think even from a coaching standpoint, they're more understanding that just because this dude makes a certain amount of money and scores 25 every night, I'm a little more aware because I heard DeMar DeRozan come out, and no one would have thought an all-star franchise player. You wouldn't know. He doesn't show it. And Doc, I'd love to hear not only your thoughts, but everyone else's thoughts in terms of how sports and the NBA specifically is kind of leading the charge in terms of trying to normalize this conversation, even in athletics where it's a very macho or bravado field.
So it starts at the top. I mean, you can look globally. Commissioner Silver acted globally, not just nationally. At a global level, he was ahead of the curve and had done the work that the NBA needed to be supportive of its organization and the players and all of that. So I think that piece is critical, that we've had a jump on that. I think just individually, we've had a lot of things that we're all dealing with. And I'm just going to go back to this point quickly of the anxiousness that we all feel. It's real. We all feel it. We all feel it differently. Finding ways that we can count on one another and lean on one another right now is really the most important message that any of us can really be talking about. How are we leaning on one another? How are we giving grace in spaces that we normally wouldn't give grace? Are we asking ourselves that question? Because if I can ask it, then maybe I can begin to answer it. But if I don't ask it, I surely can't answer it. So doing that piece, I think the NBA has done, and all the organizations, I know the Pistons have done really good work to be supportive holistically. I think that is the key that I've seen. And that's what we need globally. We need a holistic, all of us are in this together. I saw something the other day that talked about the canals in Italy And for hundreds of years, there weren't, the wildlife was almost non-existent. But over the time that we've shut down globally, the wildlife came back. It's not been that long. So what does it say? That we can fix things, we can get it right. There's always, JD, you talk about the rising and the setting. Every day the sun will go up and it will go down and it will come back up tomorrow. None are guaranteed. But what are we doing every single day to impact that? It's about a collective unconscious. The NBA really engages the broader society and impacts the consciousness of that society. What is it? How do we see athletes, and if an athlete's going to buy it or do it, then that must be really good for me to buy or do. Well, if an athlete like DeMar says, hey, there's some struggles here, then the younger group gets to say, if DeMar DeRozan could talk about that, I think I may need some conversation. So I'll end with that. But I think it's
for that point, Doc, it's not that it's just the player DeMar or Markieff and Marcus Morris. What do they look like? So young black and brown males specifically, who we're never really given a space to communicate how we feel. I think back to being in second and third grade of talking in the back of the class, and the reaction that teachers would give us was from such an angry place where it was like, damn, I know I'm not supposed to be talking, but don't treat me as if I'm breaking the law because I got some energy and me and my friends are having a conversation. And Doc, we talk about this a lot. So the impact that those guys are having, and we are having as well on the young men and women, but young men specifically, who don't get that opportunity growing up as young black boys to express themselves. So I can look at this guy who's in a place that a lot of kids would like to be in, and then he's expressing how he feels. It normalizes it to a point where I think those kids will now be more likely to lean in to a conversation when it comes to how they're feeling and how they're doing.
Hey, and I want Tyra, you said something that I'm reminded of, as JD said, teachers. So you're at home with the kids, you say, we didn't sign up for this, but we're working it. I think, and you even said, Tyra, that I'm on Google trying to figure out as I turn to them to try to teach them something. I think there's a critical opportunity in that space, because then we're learning together. Especially in the black and brown communities, very collectivistic and communal with our learning. America has taught us to be individualistic. I want an A, and I hope he gets a lower grade because the curve gets me more. It's individualistic. So can we look at even the moments that we're now home teaching our children as a communal space where we're going to learn this together? And I ain't got to be the expert because I don't know the answer, but let's figure it out together. How powerful is that for our children? Again, another opportunity for us to do something different, even in the midst of the cloud. There's an opportunity. Tyra, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. I know I read it.
I feel like that's across the board. It's kind of what I was hinting towards too when I talked about my mom and what love looks like for our relationship. So her mom didn't tell her as a kid. She didn't tell me. Now that's all I do is tell my girls, and we've used that example. And so the things I had a status, and it was the things that I dropped my kids pick up. And so using the school as the example, that's one phase, but that's across like everything. So when we talk about communicating our emotions, my mom never taught me how to communicate. And so I'm the opposite, where people weren't telling me to communicate. No one was telling me when or how to. And so I have to constantly remind myself, if they are crying or if they're inquiring about something, asking and having a conversation so they know that's normal. Let's have communication. Let's have communication on what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, what that looks like. Because I wasn't taught that, therefore I didn't do it. I was molested my whole life until I was in my teens, and I didn't tell my mom until I was in my early 20s. Why? What did communication look like for our relationship? What did that conversation even look like having with her? And so we're talking about school as one piece, but there are layers to what it looks like trying to teach while you're also learning. But that's the beauty of it too, because it builds our relationship. So learning, our 9-year-old, she'll ask me about the fruits of the spirit. We're learning the fruits of the spirit. we go through all 9. Oh, I'm missing one. Which one am I missing? Let's go look together. Yeah. And so it's built a bond between me and all of the kids. And working in sports, as you guys know, the time and the hours is not there to be in a space to reflect as we continue to talk about that, or to be fully present in what we're doing. So now I'm more mindful of, even if it's been a long day, we gotta take time to have conversations with our kids, because telling them don't touch that, we don't understand. My dad says, kids hear what you say, not what you mean. So they heard me say don't touch, and which again makes them want to touch it more, but they don't understand the why. So it's so many different layers to that, and I'm just like unwrapping, but learning together, it is a beautiful process, and it's a bonding. It builds real relationship.
And we got to be careful what we ask for too, because all of us, millions of people, I've just been so busy, and I'd love to spend a lot more time with the family. Your ass got it. Okay, okay. And close them doors and the whole family right there, right? So we ask for those things. Now, what are we doing with them? Now we got them. Hey, that's what we now are in the midst of it. Are we now upset that all of a sudden we're shoved all into one space? Or are we saying, I said I wanted more of this. So how can we utilize that, to your point, Tyra, to build and bond our relationships? Tell my sons all the time, and it's never too late. I can be mad at you and upset with you for 12 years, but 12 years in a day, we could fix it all and say, dang, we were stupid for the last 12 years. Now let's move forward. As we move forward, we'll laugh about those 12 years. So it's never too late to change it. And these are moments of opportunity.
And as we get to our last couple of points, I just want all the people attending to know, if you have any questions, just send them in, and we'll have our Q&A in the next 5 minutes. But Kayce, or if anybody else had anything on that point, I'll let you kind of go. No. Doc, what are your thoughts in terms of how can we be supportive of people that are struggling with a mental illness? So a lot of times, and there's 2 parts to that. How can we be supportive of them? And then what are ways that they can be supportive of themselves, or that we can be supportive of a person that is engaged with someone struggling from a mental illness, if that makes sense.
That's a whole lot of supports though, G. It's a lot of different supports right there. You just said.
Yeah, hey, we gotta.
That's real. Hey, so you got me on my toes. So the thing that we have to, that we should know about mental wellness, mental health, mental illness, is that we're all living with people that are in fact impacted by that. So we're just being aware that this is not unique. I think that's a critical thing. Many times we're dealing with situations, we think they're unique, but they're less unique than they really are. And the research tells us that. So given that reality, being open to how you can be supportive from their vantage point. The most critical aspect is my perspective. It's the most critical. It better be in all our lives. That's what our agendas are. My perspective is critical. That's why I have it. I want you to have it as well. It doesn't work that way always, but that is the case. So I think being clear in those spaces and moving in ways, like we said, of togetherness, reflection. So having those folks that are supporters of them, they have to be able to go to spaces where they can get information of how others are supporting folks that are dealing with those same things. So there's all kinds of things, and the internet is a beast. I mean, there's nothing you can't find. So we can find support groups. We can find support in our own social networks to talk about, hey, I'm dealing with this. My son, daughter, friend is dealing with some mental illness, and I'm struggling. Those social networks that we've built over time will help you as well. So there's technical ways and resource-driven ways, but there also are social networks that have a wealth of knowledge and wisdom within them.
Okay. We'll get to our first question. How can we best support a friend or family member who has been depressed for many years and always calls to vent and or complain? Is there any advice you can give?
just quick, I would say we have to be careful with depressed versus normal sadness. There are, again, there's no expiration on feelings, so I can be sad. My dad died when I was 15. I'm 51. Guess what? I'm still sad about that. It's 35 years. So there is some normalized sadness that is different than depression. We're not going to go into all those details, but making sure that we distinguish between what those two are. We want to try to find ways to be curious with those people in ways that they think they can be supported, right? Choosing our language wisely in how we engage. Many times if you engage curiously, people will take that.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just curious. I'm just wondering.
Tell me more about this. Or tell me more.
Right. So that's one piece of advice is enter with curiosity. Many times you get more opportunity to move around.
And any of these questions anybody can answer. Just to add my 2 cents on that is you said something, Doc, in terms of the curiosity of I may not have the answer, but I can be curious about. So tell me a little more about how you're feeling. Tell me a little more about when you feel triggered or what allows you to get into that space to allow the person to try to go back and have some type of awareness so that when they're going from let's say a 3 that's normalized sadness to that 8 or 9 in between, they can be aware, okay, what has happened? What did someone say to me? Is there a pattern in things that are being said to me that triggers me to go deeper into those feelings?
That's right. That's right.
And another question is just to speak on the combination of the mental, physical, and spiritual healing and how that pertains to overall health.
Somebody else want to hit that?
That's a tough one. I battle that one all the time because, like I said, faith is a foundation of how I operate. But I think there is a reality that people who believe ignore. So it's a difference between religion and relationship. And it's religion that will say there is no balance, or mental health doesn't exist, or these things aren't happening in our minds. And it's relationship that helps us understand that God has created resources for us to therefore use them. Maybe not be dependent on them, but to use them. And so I feel like that's an individual walk in understanding like where you stand. We talk about support systems, but I feel like we have to do a better job of creating those, because I those now at 26, where they are and who they're with and what that means. But did I understand them, 3 years ago? No. Did I even know what that looked like? Did I know how to trust? I moved every year until I went to high school. It was my mom and me and my dad when I went to visit. So it's all these dividers that had separated my life. Did I know what a community was like to be there to support? And so I feel like so many layers that we have to kind of go through before really answering that question. The first layer is like, where is my community? Who are my community of people to trust? And then the second layer of really, who can I trust to have these conversations of like how I'm really feeling and what that looks like? Because it's easy not to have these conversations. Like my mom asked me for a long time, why didn't I tell her I was molested? Well, I had watched you be sad, depressed, and drink and attempt suicide so many times. Why would I tell you something that I felt like was going to break you? So it was all these thoughts that I was running through my head, trying to figure it out and not having someone to bounce it off of. So I think we have to figure out our community before we can even get into spirituality, because it could get more tricky if we don't understand and really have a solid level of trust within our circle.
That's huge right there, Tyra. Like my circle, we've been friends. Like it's like me and like 5 or 6 other guys, and we've been friends, brothers, since we was little, 4th, 5th grade, and we've been still friends to this day. And we recently just started like our own like Bible study just to, continue to learn and continue to grow, and then help each other through a lot of different circumstances that everybody's going through. But specifically about like going through different things. And I remember when, like I was mentioning before about like going through a little bit of like a down period in my life when I was trying to figure out, all right, what is the next step for me in my career? And I think that's when I was talking to one of my boys, and he kind of like, he could sense, and that's when you kind of mentioned like the community, like he could sense something was wrong with me. And then it's kind of vice versa as well. It's like, we can all sense when something's wrong with one of us, because I really don't let too many people into my circle. I kind of keep it very compact, very tight. When I have new friends, you know, it takes a while for me to build up trust and faith in them to, you know, to really lean on them. And I think that's when, like, I think we all gained a sense of even more of a relationship of friendships, and like I said, it turned into a brotherhood when we all kind of could sense something was wrong, and we kind of bounced ideas of, all right, how can we help you kind of better yourself and better those around you with this situation that you're going through. And I think that's when I was like really like man, I can really trust in these guys, and they really helped me with that situation for sure.
Next question is, my mother has newfound mental changes due to her illness, and I want to be sure I'm treating her fairly when she doesn't necessarily make the best decisions for herself. Any advice on that? I'll give just my stance in terms of trying to balance control versus what's out of your control. So Doc talks a lot about internal locus of control, external locus of control. So internal locus of control is I can only provide as much love for a loved one who is also ill, but I can't control the decisions that they make. As much as I would like to, as much as I probably am aware that it may help them, I can't bank on my energy being taken away because I want them to make the decision that I want them to make. The internal locus of control tells me all I can do is try to provide as much information and as much support as I can. But in terms of changing their thought process, and Doc or anyone else, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. But I can only control what I can control, and sometimes it's detrimental to me to try to force what I think should happen on someone else, even if there could be research behind it, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, we can't really control what another person's actions will end up being.
I wish I could add to that, but I cannot. That was kind of a doctoral level understanding of internal and external locus of control. That's dead on. So I wish I could add to it, but I can't.
Their mental side of just, that's a daily struggle with me and my mother in our relationship, understanding, as I just used an example, I want to tell her things, but I don't want her to respond a certain way. I don't want her to, you know, curse me out or anybody else out. I don't want her to be upset. And what I have been trying to do in this time is let the control go, because I'm used to doing that. That's what I've done all my life. I've controlled the barriers in which are put up in our relationship. So how do I let those slowly down and not get anxious or not get overwhelmed, or, you know, change our dynamic to be more healthy, where it's more free flowing, but not kind of losing my mind in the midst of it. Because I'm used to saying, my mom don't need to know about that. And that's just that's my own perspective, my own imagination. It's not the reality. I know she cares for me. I know she's my biggest cheerleader, but the situations and experience that I've had with her have told me different. So I'm rewiring my brain to trust it and to not, okay, wait, let me restart. That switch in the back of my head is a constant. I'll move and I'll have to pause and be like, Tyra, just let it be. So when she comes over, I'm in my head, I'm saying, let it be. And I know it's her trying her best to change what we've known for the last handful of years. And so I have to keep reminding myself, you know, it's nothing that happens right overnight. You have to keep putting effort into that. It's repetition.
And then our last question, are there any books or literature that you found helpful in order to overcome personal challenges of seeking help when it comes to mental and spiritual health?
There were two books that I read. One was The Four Agreements. I really liked that book. And then The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Bleep.
Yeah.
That book I used to literally read. I used to work corporate. And so like I would literally read that book every day to like mentally prepare myself to enter like corporate world.
Mm.
But no, those two books definitely helped me. They give me two different kind of perspectives on things. I think The Four Agreements is more like a spiritual type of thing. And then The Subtle Art of Not Giving just kind of put things into a perspective of like, it spoke to me on like I was able to really understand type of level. It's a really easy read, but I feel like it's relatable for a lot of people, like around my age or, if not younger. But I've heard people from all different walks of life. Like I said, walking down the street, I had multiple people stop me and tell me that they loved the book and that they've passed it on to others. And once that was told to me, it was like, okay, and like I said, it was people from all walks of life. You know what I mean? People that I didn't even think would stop me, just dead in my tracks walking down the street, at 8 a.m. And I had, like I said, I had multiple people tell me like, oh, I've taken that book and I've passed it on to others and they've done the same. And that's kind of what I did with those books. And I've heard the same thing about those two books. So those are two books that helped me.
That's good.
Well, and then my question for the group, and I want everybody to answer, I'll answer, what have we taken from this conversation? And then in our respective fields, what would we like to see happen when it comes to mental wellness? For me, reflection, Doc Yeager has mentioned this a lot in terms of it's something that I try to do often, but it's also something I continue to be intentional about, reflecting on the decisions that I'm making, the impact or lack thereof that I'm making. And then at the end of the day is the responsibility for me as a coach is bigger than just winning games. Like we look now, no one knows who's second in our conference, who's fourth in our conference. Is that important? Absolutely. Winning is always important. But to the core of my being, making sure that on a day-to-day basis, I'm not only feeding what's going to give us wins, but I'm feeding what's going to last 50, 60, 100 years from now in terms of our society and the generation that comes after us. So just kind of getting back to that covenant of, is your purpose just to say that you worked with a Langston Galloway and you wore this suit versus the Lakers on national TV? Like, is that all that you're living for? Or is there a bigger purpose that goes beyond not only you, but beyond the generation of people that are going through today? So I'd love to, and Doc, you finish us off. You go last. I don't think I want.
So you answered the question, but can you just restate the question one more time?
So the first question is, what have we taken away from this conversation? And then the second question is, in the respective fields that we're in, what would we like to see when it comes to mental wellness and the progression of normalizing this conversation?
What I've taken away is just like a personal thing. Kayce talked about her journey to speaking about her story, and what I feel like really registered in my head right away is to stop being the person to push. And so I'm quick to tell my friends like the same thing she said, like, you could just talk, because I have felt so much power in talking about my story. It doesn't necessarily mean so that's something that's going to stick with me for sure. And because I do workshops with women, so I'm pushing them around in my workshop either. One thing that I want to see more so culture-wise in sports is boundaries being created. When we talk about like mental health and wellness and what that looks like, taking more empathy into those conversations and allowing people to breathe. One thing I feel, and I'm not an athlete, but just being so close to the game that players have the luxury to have mental health days, and just like the lack of empathy to an individual who plays 80 plus games a season, crammed in X amount of months. And I just don't feel like we are so excited to see the entertainment piece. We can't see the human. And that's one thing that has really pushed me to stay in sports, and why I love the interviewing side, because I love getting to know humans and hoping that they'll continue to tell their stories, because whether we agree with it or not, there are so many young males and females who look up to these athletes and entertainers, and them telling their story, their real truths of what they dealt with growing up, is what motivates them to shift their narrative or their perspective. Like, in the sports world, in the entertainment world, we have the ability to change perspectives. And in my mind, that's the most important and powerful thing. If you could change the person's perspective, you could change their life, their minds, their reality of what is to come in the future. And so I take away pushing. I hope that we move forward setting boundaries in the mental health space, and I will continue to encourage players to tell their stories to empower the next person coming after them.
So just to kind of touch on what Tyra said, but coming from, somebody who said, I don't want to be pushed, I still want to emphasize that it was really nice to hear from people that you have a safe space to talk. So just at least letting people know, especially women, like, you don't have to talk, but when you're ready, I'm here. I think that's what's very important. So just to touch on that. But what I took away from the conversation was adaptability. So how we adapt in situations, that are thrown at us, obviously something like this. How do we adapt? What do we do? And then not making excuses. So it was like utilizing our resources. So whether it be Google or, Langston, creating your own gym so that you're working out and you're not saying, oh, I don't have a gym to go to. Oh, the facility is closed. Well, what can I do with what I have to make the best of the situation? So adaptability and, making zero excuses with the resources that we have is what I took from this. Just conversations like this, with people that are, look like us, that have been in situations like that, like us, just hearing everybody talk about, their situations, I think we need more conversations like this. Of all ages, obviously, we all look different. You know what I'm saying? Like, just hearing it from people that, we feel like we can relate to, and, people in, professions. Obviously, we're all in different professions, but we're all, in the sports world. Just hearing people like us talk about those things, talk about that it's normal, talk about that we've been through situations, we've overcame them, we're still dealing with them. These are the type of conversations I think need to be essentially publicized and out there for people to hear, because if I was listening to this, I feel like I would be more open to having the conversation. You know what I mean? That people that look like me are talking about these things, have been through things like me. Okay, I'm not in this alone. And so, hearing from people who are successful in their fields talk about that they're dealing with mental health and mental wellness, I feel like just is so important, and more of these conversations need to be had. So these are the kind of things that I want to see.
Yeah, now for me, the biggest reflection of this group is definitely the growth. That never be complacent, continue to push forward, and the daily struggles in life are always going to be there, but just to continue growth of, hey, no matter what's going on in my life, I have to continue to push forward. And I think that everybody kind of touched on that with, starting out slow, trying to figure out, all right, how do I deal with this new normal, and how do I find a way to, like Kayce said, like adapt and be better for myself and for the people around me, because everybody is either following you, watching you, or they're in contact with you. So it's like everybody's always has an eye on you, or they maybe not an eye on you, but maybe from a distance somebody is admiring you to be a role model or something like that. Maybe your kids, like Tyra, like has 4 kids. So everybody's always trying to find a way to grow. And I think that that's what this group everybody touched on, and that's important for a lot of people to understand. And then for me, I think that in this space of professional sports, and then also my friendships, relationships. I think that being able to meet people where they are, not taking someone's being upset or being down or just not knowing what a person's going through lightly, because you can meet somebody tomorrow or meet somebody over the internet and they might ask, hey, can you give me advice on this? And trying to, maybe not give a full spill of what's going on, but just being able to give them a small snippet of, hey, look, this is what you should be doing. This is something that it can help you going forward, because you just never know if this is life or death for them. So I think that's what I've noticed in some friends that I've had in the past. Is like, I didn't know where some of my friends were at, and then next thing you know, like a couple of my friends committed suicide. So I'm like, wow, like I didn't know that anything was going on. I could never, you never know. You just never know what's going on through somebody's mental, their space. So that's important, trying to meet people where they are and trying to help out wherever you can.
Yeah, so you say meet people where they are. I heard Kayce just say that people recognizing that they're not alone. Like, I'm not alone in this, and there are people that are talking about this. And when I listen to these conversations, I may feel better. Is something I think is really important. But this piece of that, all that really speaks to the human condition, right? That I talked a little bit about earlier. We want to be connected. We want to be loved, and we want to be cherished. We all want that in different ways, and it looks different for each of us. But that is part of that human condition. I think that's something that we need to talk more about. And the last thing I would say is, just to the point of what we're here to do. Everyone has a story. Everyone here has a story. And we are working towards making sure and assuring that we're the author of our stories, that we write our narratives, that no one will write my narrative for me. And if you do, I'll smack your hand away from the pen. Don't write mine, I'll write my own. I think that's, for me, what the summary of what I heard and what I experienced there was really about. So I appreciate y'all. I appreciate all y'all. That was beautiful too.
So again, thank you all. Thank you for everyone tuning in. Thank you guys for being a part of this. Again, happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers that are here and that are spiritually with us. We'll be back again next Sunday with another live webinar, and then our the Right Conversation podcast will be launching another episode on Thursday as well. Again, thank you all for tuning in. And like Dr. Yeager said, we're here to continue to normalize this conversation and to just promote the fact that we all have our own stories, and nobody else is a better expert at your story than you. With that being said, thank you guys. Have a great rest of your Mother's Day, and let's talk soon.
Bye.